All right, what's up, everybody? Back for another awesome episode with another incredible guest. Okay, today we have Phil Van Pelt. He is the owner of soon to be Onward Physical Therapy coming to Cranford, New Jersey. He also is the creator of the Shin Splint sandal and a former teammate of mine. So I know he works his ass off. I know he's a passionate dude and he's one hell of a physical therapist. So I can't wait to ask him questions that are going to help you guys out. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's really cool to reconnect with you. I know we've chatted on Facebook Messages setting this up, and it was like, wow, like it's really been 12 years.
I know, it's wild.
And it just, yeah, what a time to be alive and reconnect like that and to be here. So thank you for having me.
No problem, man. No problem. I'm glad to have you here in person instead of seeing the Facebook memories popping up.
Right. Hey.
So let's start from the beginning here because I know that we won't go too far back. Like I'm not talking like sleepovers and stuff, but I'm talking because I do remember those days.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of people who I come across with in my line of work, the moms over 40, usually starting with like some sort of issues, whether it's joint issues or like soft tissue issues and things like that. And they really benefit from a physical therapist. So before we dive into the specifics of that, like what got you into the PT space? Because I know you're a smart dude, went to freaking Stevens and like you could have gone a million directions. Like why PT?
Yeah. Gosh. All right. So Brian and I played football together in high school. That was, our most recent, like intimate excursion, spending time together to really slug it out on the practice field. Brian was obviously way better of an athlete than I was. And it became pretty apparent even from then that I had to use my brain and not my brawn. I'm working on the brawn piece. We're getting a little stronger. I did 275 for a deadlift 4x5 yesterday. So we're doing all right.
There we go.
Yeah. I went to Stevens in Hoboken because I was originally an engineering student. It was not really for me. I switched to business, even though, math and science was definitely what I wanted to do. Switched to business, and then I actually transferred to Northeastern University in Boston, where I originally wanted to go to school, but decided to take out some extra loans to make that happen, right? Obviously.
Because why not?
Why not, right? We might as well do it when we're 19. So I did that. And while I was there, I was, going to the gym. I was super active. I was playing basketball. I was lifting, playing pickup soccer and stuff. And I started to develop some knee pain myself, 19 years old. I came home, I think it was for like Thanksgiving. And I saw an orthopedist who told me I had chondromalacia patella. And I'll never forget that, right? It's big. And you're like, what in the world is that word? Those words. And
say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, right. And the guy was super old. He had to be in his 80s, or at least I'm thinking this when I'm 19 years old, sitting on his little table in his office. Took an x-ray and said that, didn't really give me much else, and then said, all right, like carry on your way type of thing. I think he may have given me a script for PT. I'm not sure. But I went back to Northeastern and I saw the sports medicine doc there. And by the time I got there, I'd spent all of Thanksgiving weekend reading, right? I did the terrible thing of going on Google and trying to figure out what is chondromalacia? How do I treat it? Why did it happen? How do I make it better? How fast can I get back to jumping on a basketball court, right? Because I'd say that's like my only athletic aspect that I'm truly proud of is I can still touch a 10-foot basketball ring jumping pretty high. So like,
I think you got me on that one.
Rebounds,
I think you definitely got me on that one.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I got the hops anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I have a poop in the back, and every so often I'm like, can I still touch it? But he said chondromalacia patella. I started reading. I went to the sports medicine doc, and I just unloaded. I told this guy everything I knew, and he looked at me. He goes, "Do you study this?" And I was like, "No." All right, whatever. He sent me to the PT near campus, and I pretty much did the same exact thing. And the PT said, "Do you study this?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Well, why not? Like, clearly you're into it." And I was like, "Huh," And so just through my course of PT for my own knee pain, a very common story, right? A lot of physical therapists have, some injury or some pain. They go to PT, they're like, "Hey, this is pretty cool." So then I had to apply to get into the program, right? The 6-year program at Northeastern. I actually didn't get in the first time. I had to go back and retake a course because at Stevens, it was, what was it? Not calculus. It was chemistry, I think. I didn't do as well as I should have in chemistry class. And I had to retake chemistry and really show them like, no, I mean it. Like I'm coming for this. I want this. So transferred in the program, got into PT, and that's kind of where it all started. I graduated from Northeastern in 2018, ran straight down to Maryland to be with my girlfriend, Christina, at the time. she's still my fiance now, so different title, but
Yeah.
it's
I
not
saw the
one.
picture last year. I'm like, I
Right.
hope that's the same girl.
Like, ooh, yeah. Um, yeah, we're getting married next July, so we've got a date and everything. It's really exciting. But we moved down to Maryland because she was in grad school, and that's where I started my career as a physical therapist at a physician-owned outpatient clinic. So a lot of people having surgery coming in and seeing us. I worked pretty closely with the foot and ankle specialist at the time. I don't know why, just a lot of Achilles repairs or people falling off ladders and then needing like screws and plates thrown into their leg and some pretty gnarly stuff. ACLs, rotator cuff repairs, people with just good old fashioned shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain. And then kind of kept working from there. So I'll pause and I did not answer your question, but that's kind of how I started
Oh
my
yeah.
career.
No, that was good. That was good because I always like knowing where everybody came from because it kind of helps everybody see that most people get into this for the right reasons. And it sounds like you're, again, one of those people. And I know that, like with physical therapy, with personal training, that's usually the case. Like somebody got really good results in whatever they were trying to do. And they're like, I want to do this for other people.
Right. Yeah. And for me, that's actually, oh gosh. Okay. How deep we're going to go, Brian?
Just keep it going. Keep it
Right.
going. You're
So
making
for
my
me, I
job
was at that
easy.
job, my first job for 9 months or so. And I was just, God, I was putting in 8-hour days in the clinic and then 3 hours doing notes after that. Right. And I was, not really sleeping a ton and trying to give every moment I could to the patient that was in front of me and not to the computer that was next to me. Right. And that really was important to me to give as much time and attention because when you have one person coming in every half an hour, like nonstop all day long, and you're seeing, 16 people in a day, those people need as much of your attention as possible because they're coming to me with a problem in their life that's holding them back in some aspect, whether it's playing with their kids or being able to go work out or break their leaves or whatever it may be. And if I'm like, well, I need to get through my notes, like for me, I can't sleep with that at night, right? Like I have to be able to give everything I can. It's got too hard, so I ended up switching this into something else, and that was like my first attempt at my own excursion. I tried to start a cash based mobile practice where I would just go to people's homes right on my own. And it was kind of like a consulting thing on its own, right? Because I didn't have a lot of the equipment you would have. I didn't have, a sturdy table. I had a fold up table I'd put in the back of my car and go around. And I made some connections with gyms in the area and whatnot. So I did that for a while. And then I was like, I'm only a year out of school. I need to go learn some more stuff. Let me go get a job. And I got a job in DC and I was working there right when COVID hit, actually, or right before COVID is when I started. Uh, and then, gosh, I think I was there for about a year with a break because of COVID when everything shut down for a hot second.
Yeah.
And I had some wild things, wild stories. I'd referred someone out for pelvic floor. She was in a car accident and she was having some incontinence issues after she had a child. So I was like, hey, like I can't help you with that. That's not my forte, right? That's not my thing. But there's definitely someone that can. So I tried to send a referral for her to someone else, a specialist for that, because if you have that, that's not a normal thing. It's common, right?
Yeah.
But that can be addressed and fixed. So managed quite well with some pelvic floor physical therapy. There are some awesome therapists out there that can help with that. So I tried to do that, and I got in trouble for trying to send quote business away. And I was like, what? Like I was trying to help her type thing. And my supervisor got all mad at me, and I was like, wait, so let me get this straight. You're telling me you want me to try and help the patient less? And he was like, and he knew I had him caught, and he was like, yes. And I was like, okay. And for me, that was the nail in the coffin. I ended up leaving that job, went to a private practice. And that was a smaller practice right near the White House, which was pretty cool. We had some pretty higher level, high up people, if you will, who kind of came through the doors just because of the proximity to the White House, literally like 3-4 blocks away.
Was it a little hard to not help some of those people as much, depending on who it was?
No. I mean, a lot of them, like they work in someone's office, right?
Yeah.
Other people that was like, she said like the vice president of like New Mexico, or not New Mexico, vice president of Mexico, and like the secretary of treasury, back in the day, and they'd have like Secret Service come in and stuff. Apparently pretty wild. But I was seeing like
cool.
People who like work in so-and-so's office on the Hill, right? Stuff like that. So like right next to elbow with, some of the leaders of our country, which is kind of a crazy concept when they're, for us, like especially in New Jersey, they're just on TV. Like, but they were, these were people that I knew, and it was people that they worked with, so a little bit different. But after that, I had, some, again, just like, I had a patient. It was one example I'll share. The guy was in his 80s and he had some shoulder pain and he wanted to work on getting stronger. I gave him like a 2 pound dumbbell and we were practicing coming up overhead. And the guy like never really worked out before in his life and he had some delayed onset muscle soreness. Apparently, I overcooked him and he did not like
Two,
that.
hey,
He went to
it
his
happens.
doctor. Yeah, it does. He went to his doctor and complained, and then it came back to the owner of the practice, and she was upset with me and all this stuff. She said, over the age of 40, you shouldn't lift up like overhead, like past your shoulder height type thing after the age of 40. And I was like, what? Like that's so incorrect on so
Yeah,
many different levels.
that's what do they call that? Cover your ass medicine or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like basically let's apply a general rule that's not going to really help that many people, but it's going to keep us from getting sued.
And even that though, it's not like PTs don't get sued a lot unless you do something really stupid like touch somebody, right? But like
Yeah.
there is no position or body movement that people should, as a hard rule, avoid, right? Even after
Wait, can you say that like 5 times really loud for everybody
yeah,
listening?
there is no body position, movement, or activity that people should avoid as a hard rule. It doesn't exist. There are positions that are painful. There are activities that are painful. There are positions you may not be able to get to, like touching your toes, right? For a lot of us, that gets a little stiff after a while. But that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's harmful or you should avoid it, right? Like some people can't reach up over their head. That doesn't mean you should avoid it. Even if you have for the last 40 years, if you're willing to, that's absolutely something I help people work on, right? Is how can I make it easier to put a sweater on, right? Or be able to reach behind my back, right? To unhook or rehook my bra clasp and powder my nose, as I've had patients tell me, like, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's important. We got to do these things in life. Reaching back behind you can be tough sometimes. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
no position.
I can't tell you how many people I've heard like they went to reach in the back of their car and all of a sudden their shoulder just hurts like
Yes.
hell.
Yes. I don't know what it is about that position, right? I mean, I do. It's extension, external rotation, a little abduction. Okay, fine. It's a little,
Yeah.
more challenging and demanding. And then you reach back for, a bag or something. You lift it. You're like, oh, there it is. So I get it, but it doesn't mean it's
not
bad.
to get too nerdy, but I feel like even internal rotation, people just do not have that ability to like turn, like for everybody that is not seeing this because it's audio, like turning your thumb downward and then reaching behind your back, like palm facing behind you. It's like so many people have so much trouble with that position.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the visual of almost like take your hand and then go to tuck in the back of your shirt, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of visualize that. There's a little extension reaching behind you, but the rotation that happens is internal rotation versus if you were to wind up like throwing a baseball or something, right? When your arm goes up kind of back behind your head, that's external rotation. So those two extremes, can be not as strong for people or not as mobile, but that doesn't mean we should avoid them, right? Like I want you to be able to throw a football or a baseball or a softball with your kids, throw a frisbee. Those are worthwhile positions to own, worthwhile positions to be able to practice getting better at, or just get rid of that pain, right? Eliminate that pain, get back to the things you love, whatever it may be, if I'm not naming it. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm so glad that you said that because I think people do get caught up in like the extremes where it's like team full range of motion where it's like, we don't care if it hurts. If your butt's not touching the ground, it's not good enough. Or it's like the 90-degreers that are like, nope, can't go past this certain amount. I won't say Mr.
Don't say Joel Seedman's name, but
Joel Seedman. If anybody listening is following Joel Seedman, just hit that unfollow real quick.
as a doctor of physical therapy, I strongly recommend you unfollow him. Unless you want something to laugh at.
That's the thing. He's one of those people, and I get that like everybody listening right now probably like doesn't understand that a lot of these people you see that are super popular get made fun of relentlessly by the actual professionals. And he's one of those guys. Like if you look in the comments, everybody's just ripping him to shreds. And that's a good litmus test. If you see somebody saying something and all these people that have credentials are ripping them apart, it's usually a good tell.
Yeah. One of those, like, don't believe everything you see on social media, right?
Yep.
Brian, you had referenced like the squatting, right? Getting down low in a squat. It doesn't have to be your butt all the way to the ground. if it's super painful. We can't just force it, right? That's obstinate, that's stubborn, that's not smart. In the
Yeah.
absence of hip and knee pathology, though, right? If you don't have hip pain or knee pain or low back pain, yeah, I do want you to squat as deep as you can to get the full range of motion effects that are available to you. But if you have something that's really bugging you, you can't walk up and down the stairs because your knee is so painful. Like, sure, let's modify that squat. Let's do a partial range. What else can we modify? And then also get that feeling better so you can squat to the full depth that your body has available to you. So
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
like the
that's a great
direction you're
example.
going in. I'm going to keep pushing it that way because
Yeah.
I'd love for everybody on this podcast listening to like understand like the journey that they should take. Like, what do you think is like the telltale sign? It's like, all right, they should probably get physical therapy or go to their doctor to check if they could get a script for it. Like, what would be some indicators for you where it's like you're happy that they're in the office?
Even better, you don't have to go to your doctor to get a script, right? To be able to go see a physical therapist. We have direct access now. Laws have changed a little bit. So if you have something going on, you can go straight to a PT that you like or you want to work with right away. Now, on the back end, for insurance to cover some stuff, depending on your insurance plan, some groups do require that you get a script for them to cover those visits or barely cover those visits, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
But yes, so go see a PT, right? Get that script if you need it based on insurance regulations and whatever your plan requires. But the kind of time to go see a PT, if I had to kind of name it, is we all get aches and pains or feel a little tight. If you find that one doesn't go away after a week or two, type of thing, right? A little tightness in your low back, or if it limits you from doing things in your everyday life, right? If your 5-year-old runs up to you and wants to be picked up, but your back is bugging you too much, and you're like, honey, I can't, right? Like, I just can't right
Yeah.
now. That's the moment, like, you got to say, okay, I need to change something because this isn't working. So when some ache or pain limits you in what you do in your everyday life for more than a few days, that's the time to go see a physical therapist, because sometimes you get a little tweak of something, it's a little achy, and you wait 2 days and it goes away. That's fine. Go ahead, ride that out. I'm not saying with every ache and pain you have to go, oh no, like I got to go see a doctor. No. It's okay.
Yep.
Like, sometimes things shake out on their own, and that's okay. And when it doesn't, after a few days, come see us. You find a good one, they'll be able to help you 100% of the time.
Yeah. And there's a saying like lotion is motion. Like if you can do it properly, it might clear things up for you,
Yes,
but you got to know how to
absolutely.
move properly. So it's like, who do you see about that? If you got a personal trainer, usually it's really good for them to see form. But if you don't and you're operating on your own, nothing is like a higher standard than a physical therapist. Like if we're talking about like, okay, if this person has this baseline level of knowledge, they can probably help you out a lot. Usually.
Yeah, I'll say usually, right? I've
Usually.
seen plenty of PTs that are not great, right? I'll be honest about that. But on the flip side, I have met some personal trainers who are absolutely phenomenal, right? And sometimes I almost want them rehabbing some injuries more than the PTs. Because if, like you said, if they're going to see your form, okay, you go to your personal trainer, you're working out, and you're going, hey, my knee really hurts or something, right? I'm going to use knee pain here, and say, okay, like, here was the plan I had in mind. How can we modify this? That personal trainer should be able to, and probably can, right? Be able to change stuff up for you that day on the fly in the moment, so you can still get a good workout. Because, like Brian said, motion is lotion. We got to keep you moving, because for the greater picture of our health and fitness, long term, we want to keep you active, right? I would much rather deal with issues of fitness, knee pain, than issues of sickness, diabetes, heart failure, and high blood pressure when we're in our 70s and 80s. And staying active, staying in the gym, working with your trainers and working with people at the gym is how you avoid those things in the future. So the
Yeah.
aches and pains will show up, but come see us, come see people, and get that taken care of.
Yeah. I mean, if we're being honest, like a visit to the orthopedic or a physical therapist is pretty much inevitable at some point in our lives. But all that
Yes,
other stuff that you just mentioned can, even with the worst workout program, with like the worst, like you can poke holes in nutrition. But if you're trying to eat better, if you're trying to move more, that stuff is usually going to be way less risky.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's exactly all those things. Like, if you have questions on any of it, right? Personal trainers, physical therapists will be able to help you, at least with the personal trainers, definitely with that first step of modifying the workouts. And if it's really bothersome, a good PT is really going to be able to say, okay, here's some things we're going to avoid just for a little while, and then we'll get you back to those while we're helping put this fire out, find the root cause of what's going on, and then get that long-term fix, get you really back to your workouts 100%, so that you can keep doing what you love, keep
Yeah.
exercising.
Exactly. Now, if somebody is like in the market, like they're like, all right, I probably need to see a physical therapist. Like they just keep going golfing and their elbow won't shut up. Or like they are going on their long walks and their like plantar fasciitis is lit up. And they're like, all right, I need to see somebody or I'm going to like lose my mind.
Yeah.
What is like a good tell that somebody's like a good PT? Like I know you're probably not going to know until you actually go in there and see how they operate, but are there like red flags like Joel Seedman esque things that you're just like, when you see this, probably not the best place, but when you see this, you probably know that they know their stuff.
That's a really good question. I have been having a harder time being able to have a hard identifier for that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but for me, what I look for and what I'm doing with Onward is trying to provide kind of what I think is like bare minimum, like not minimum, like mandatory and above and beyond. So without like I'll say just describing what I'm hoping to do for people in the future, I look for how much time do you get one on one with that physical therapist, right? Do you go in and see that PT and they're there with you for a lot of the time that you're working? Or are you there with the PT for the first 10 minutes and they say, get on the bike? And then all of a sudden you're working with the 18-year-old kid that needs to get some hours for volunteer for maybe his college program to get into PT school, which not knocking that, but like that you're spending more time with that guy and an exercise sheet, then that type of place is not where you want to be. You want to have a PT that's going to have the opportunity to spend more time with you because you need a little bit more attention. There is some nuance to stuff, right? That if we're not doing some things a certain way, we're not going to get the benefit and improvement that we're looking for you. So
And
find
that
a place.
makes,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
that
Sorry.
makes, I was just going to say that makes a ton of sense because I mean, on that sheet, you can control for load, tempo, and like all these other things. But at the end of the day, if you're not keeping your joints somewhat stacked and things are moving in the right direction, it's going to keep ticking that spot off over and over again. So if you
Right.
don't have a trained eye, it's just going to keep hurting you, right?
Yeah, very potentially, right? If I have a plan, I say, okay, support staff, go run Brian through this exercise program. I have no idea how that goes until the very end, very often, right? If I'm trying to see 3 or 4 patients in the room at the same time and I have to split my attention amongst the patients, that is not what you want as a patient. I'm going to say that right now, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you call and ask a PT place, you can say, how long are the sessions, one, and then how many patients is the therapist treating at the same time, or how many people are showing up at 9 a.m. for this appointment time. It might put the front desk person in a bit of a weird spot, depending on how you phrase it. But
Yeah.
I think that's an uncomfortable question that needs to be asked for your benefit to make sure that you
Yeah.
get the care that you want and deserve.
I guess it wouldn't be too weird to ask, like, what's the maximum amount of patients per hour or something like that? Like,
Yeah, how many patients per hour does this PT see?
yeah.
How often are
I,
they scheduled?
and as a patient trying to get the best care, it's like, what are they going to say? We don't tell you that? Like, red
Right,
flag.
right. I think the other thing too is when people go and see a physical therapist, if you walk into the clinic and you don't like what you're seeing, let them know, hey, I'd like to be done. Go find someplace else, right? I think people underappreciate that where if they have knee pain and they go someplace and they go through the whole program, you can always quit, right? There's nothing holding you there really, except
Yeah.
you keep showing up and they keep trying to schedule you.
Well,
If it's
I
not
I have
getting
a
you where you want
question
to be,
though. What's your view on packages? Because I know that like Kairos do it a lot. I know that like some PTs will do that. Like, what's your view? What's your standpoint on like somebody paying in package form rather than session to session?
this goes into the business side of things, right? Less so for like
Because
the
I think that's what keeps people locked in, and they're like, "Well, I already paid, so
yeah, it creates accountability, right? Which I think for like a personal trainer can be a fantastic thing, honestly, right? Because if I'm having trouble working out and I don't pay for my 10 sessions or my 2 or 3 months up front, it might be hard for me to show up, right? And that's where I want you to show up. But if you go to a Cairo or a PT or whoever and they have a package and you pay the full amount up front, let's say for 10 sessions, and you're dropping a good chunk of change on it, now you feel like you have to see the whole thing through, even if you're not getting better. And it is something that, if it's done really well, you can decrease a good chunk of your pain in the first few sessions, right? You should be able to see that and not wonder, am I getting better? You should always know, am I getting better? And see that during the session, in between sessions, by the end of that session you're in, and be able to track that. And that PT should be very diligent about test retest to see, okay, is the person in front of me, is this patient getting better? And if you're not sure about that, go find someone else that is going to be a little bit more uh, dialed in to that assessment of your progress, so that both of you know every single time that you're either moving forward, or if you're not, what do we need to change and do differently to make sure that we can move you forward.
Absolutely. And for anybody who like was wondering test retest, like what the heck is that? Basically just like doing one thing and being like, does this make it better or worse? And then going from there. Because I know
Yeah, absolutely.
trainers do that a lot too. And I think it's like a great thing that young trainers can get really good with is like, does this hurt? No? Okay, let's keep doing it. And going with that model. Because you can be like very, I hate to say uneducated, but like you can get away with a lot with just going by, does this hurt somebody? No? Cool. Let's keep going. At least in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to use the knee pain example for people listening, right? Where if someone comes in to see me when they have knee pain and it only hurts when they go up the stairs, right? Or when they bend their knee past, let's say 90 degrees of bending. If I'm not tracking that, right? You walk in the door and I say, hey, Susie, how's it going? And you're like, I think it's going okay. I'm like, all right, well, let's prove it, right? How far can we bend your knee without pain today? And it's 95 degrees. And last week it was only 85 degrees. Ooh, I know we're getting better. And then if I do something, whether it's massage on your leg or some cupping or some dry needling or whatever it may be, and then after we test that again, the same thing, let's bend your knee. Oh, I can get it to 105 degrees now. That is showing us improvement. Objectively, this got better. And that's what we're looking for in the clinic. So if you have something like that, whether it's reaching up overhead, can you reach up? Oh, it's an 8 out of 10 pain. Oh, you did this thing. My shoulder feels better. Let me reach up. Oops, same thing. Okay, now it's only a 4 out of 10. That's better for the same exact motion. That's what I meant by retest. So I apologize. It was a
Yep.
little
Oh
ahead
no,
of
it's okay. I just
yeah.
always assume that like I try and catch it when we do use some jargon or like some terms that like not everybody gets
Right.
because I know my audience is pretty damn smart. I know you guys are because we go over a lot of stuff, but always want to keep that in mind just in case. Now, when we're talking about like physical therapy, like I know that sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between physical therapy and personal training. In your ideal like situation, what would you love to happen from somebody going into your office to going out of your office to resuming like weight training? Like how would that look for you? What are some things you'd like the trainer to keep doing that you have already implemented and you're just like don't screw them up? Like what would that look like?
Love this because this ties back to the first point of what are red flags I should be looking for, or what are things I should look for in a physical therapy clinic that I'm going to. And there used to be this gap where it used to be you would go see a physical therapist and you would get rid of your pain, you'd feel better. Okay, cool. But then you would go and work out and it would be a little higher level than what you were doing in the clinic. And there was this gap between the exercises in the physical therapy clinic and the exercises you might be doing either activity wise in the rest of your life or with a personal trainer in a gym, etc. And so sometimes PTs will say, hey, here are the things I want you to work on or focus on or work around or whatever. And I think that communication is fantastic. Um, but like with onward physical therapy, I'm going to have a squat rack. There will be barbells in my clinic, right?
I feel
Because
like that's a giant green flag when you go to a
yes,
physical therapist, or even like there are some really solid chiropractors out there too that like when you see a squat rack and some dumbbells and kettlebells, you know
people are
you're in
going
the
to get
right
better there.
place. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that exactly, right? Like you said it, I didn't even need to spell it out. You did it for me, which is beautiful. I
Oh yeah.
love that.
I got you.
Look for that squat rack. If there's not enough heavy weight, right? If the heaviest weight they have is 10 pounds, ooh, I mean, that's good for the 85-year-old, right? That's never lifted weight before in their life.
Yeah.
But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, at very quickly, you're going to need more than 10 pounds with almost any activity that you're doing. And
Well,
to
the
make sure that
average,
that can help you get back to the
yeah,
activity you were doing before you had pain. So I'm not
yeah,
just going to release you out into the world and say, good luck, figure it out, hope it works out at, your lunges at the gym with Brian, like front rack lunges, let's say. I'm going to say, let's do them here. What do you use at the gym? Oh, I use 20-pound dumbbells in each hand and I do lunges. Perfect. Grab the 20s. Let's try it. Right. We're going to make sure that you can do that before you are done. Right. And that you are maybe even getting better. We say, oh, we're crushing it right now because you're doing so well. Let's grab the 25s. Right. And then being able to go back and do your own thing, confidently knowing that you get to work with your trainer with no limitations. So there should be no gap on this. You should find a PT clinic that has a squat rack, has barbells, has kettlebells, has dumbbells that can challenge you, because that's going to be the thing that makes the lasting improvement where you stay better, not just from, Monday to Wednesday between your appointments, but over time you go, oh, you know what? Like Wednesday all the way to the next week, I was feeling significantly better the whole way through. So look for those things, and really there shouldn't be that gap in
Yeah,
between like what I'm doing, what you're doing, what you guys are doing, right? You should
I
be able to
totally
be
agree.
very seamless.
Yeah. Because as a trainer, it's like when I hear somebody like, oh, I worked on this with my PT, like we got it to a point where I'm pain free. I'm like, that made my life so much easier because we're not like banging our head against the wall. This still hurts. This still hurts. It's like, okay, we fixed it. Awesome. On with the show. But if you have a PT that's like trying to go against that, then it's something to question a little bit. Like I say, PT is a personal trainer, but like if you have a personal trainer that's like trying to clash heads with the physical therapist, that's also not a good thing. So there's some green flags in this episode, some red flags. We're throwing them all out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. And to be honest, like we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We're trying, ultimately, we should be trying to get people to stay fit and healthy for the long term, because aches and pains are going to show up. I'm going to lay in bed and wake up one day, my neck's going to be super stiff. It happens to my fiance, but once every 4 months. And for me, because I live with her, I can crack her neck. I can, massage her neck muscles real quick and give her some shrugs to do. And it's gone within like 48 hours. Right. But, if you're working with a trainer and working out, we're going to a gym, doing fitness classes, whatever, everyone's on the same team. So there should be no headbutting here. Like, oh, I don't want you to do this when you go to work out with your trainer. And the trainer's like, well, we really should do this, or vice versa. Right. That's not a good sign. Even if
Yep.
we don't know each other, just say, hey, here's my phone number. Like, text me if they have any questions. Like, I'll absolutely chat with them. You should be very, or not you, but the PT, physical therapist, and personal trainer should really be looking to work together.
Absolutely. I think the most common situation is like when people try and force movements. And this usually happens in more of like a group setting, typically, is when like the whole group is doing, say, barbell overhead presses or deadlifting with the barbell from the floor. And you feel like awkward saying, well, I was told I can't do this. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you want to be in pain or do you want to save somebody's feelings for whatever reason? Like, what do you think when it comes to like forcing movements? Like, what's your stance on like the types of, I guess, exercises that we see propagated all over the place? Like, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Hmm. I think it's a little bit of environment and culture and relationships and ego, right? All of those things wrapped together in some capacity. And when you're working one on one with a trainer or in a small group setting, depending on the people, you may not have that, like, you have to do this exercise the way that I showed you. But when you're in a large class setting, sometimes your ego gets in the way, and I want to lift a heavier weight from the
Yep.
floor, right? And maybe my back was already flared up, and I should have raised the weight up a little bit to make it easier for me that day and not gone as heavy. But I saw my buddy, Kevin, and this is real thing. When I see Kevin lift 40 pounds more on his deadlift than me, yeah, I
Yeah.
want to lift more weight, try and be closer to his number. And like now, the next day I can't walk because my back is so tight, it's so stiff from pushing
Yep.
too far, right? That and that happens. I'm not saying like there are any specific movements that you should avoid or not do, right? But you got to know your own body, and you got to check your ego at the door, because really, I'd rather you be able to live for not live. That's a poor choice, but be able to show up for another workout, right? Like live another day was kind of where I was going, but like
Yeah.
show up for another workout rather than crush yourself in this one, not be able to recover, maybe tweak something because you let ego get in the way. That's like the
Yeah.
number one reason that people get injured really in like fitness classes is ego when they look
Yeah.
at it like with CrossFit and stuff, and it tends to be more males than females, but I
Hey,
wonder why.
go figure. But I'm very glad that you said that it's because like they go too hard. Because I think a lot of people are scared of certain movements, thinking this is inherently going to mess me up because whoever put it out there, or like they hurt themselves previously doing that movement. Like what's your stance on like different movements? Like how would you talk to somebody that's like, yeah, that movement, I'm too scared of that.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful time to work with a physical therapist, because I want to break down, well, why are you afraid of that movement? And let's pretend it's bending down to pick up, like a deadlift is a great example. It's like, I can't do that. It's going to mess up my back, or my back's messed up. I have a bad back. I hear that a lot. And it's, well, why? Or it's, oh, I hurt myself 10 years ago. I had a microdiscectomy surgery when I was 27 years old and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, John, like, you're 43 now, right? Like, I just watched you pick 300 pounds up off the ground. Why are you capping yourself at 350, right? Or whatever it may be. I can't do this kettlebell swing, right? Because it hurts my back. I'd stay away from that. That's a great time to work with a PT as well, because they'll be able to help you, one, build a little confidence in some of these movements, break it down really small until you're able to do the thing that used to make you scared, and show you that, hey, this isn't bad for you when we scale it and build you up appropriately. If you try and go from 0 pounds, you've never deadlifted a barbell before in your life, to trying to pull 225 pounds or even 135 pounds, yeah, that might be a little too much. But if you have a movement you're avoiding because of fear or a previous injury that you are not, it's not hurting anymore, but you're avoiding certain activities or exercises, that's a great time to find a really good PT that can help you with this fitness aspect, get you back to those fitness activities, so that you and your trainer, you and your coach are not limited by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing that happens a lot too with people, like when they go from like 0 to 100 real fast, is somebody takes a ton of time off, or like they've been busy, and all of a sudden they jump into these group classes, or they do Zoom, like some crazy intense Zumba or Pilates or yoga. And it's like the hardest class, and they're doing like burpees, or they're jumping and doing high knees, all this high impact stuff, and their body's just not ready for it. And then I think that's where most people would be better off with like a basic strength training program if they're just getting into it, rather than just jumping into the deep end.
Yeah, especially with group classes, I think that's an opportunity where a lot of people who are just starting out, you got to scale it for a whole lot longer, right? Like, decrease the challenge for way longer than you realize, months, not like the first few weeks, no, months, where if they're saying, hey, you should be doing this with 30 pounds, maybe you try it with 20, right? Just almost just because. And even if you find that it's not that challenging, see how you feel the next day and the day after that, and then do another workout and the day after that, and do another workout and see the day
Yep.
after that, because there is a cumulative effect to that, where you might be able to get away with it once. But if you keep doing that and it's too big of a jump, I think that's where people then can surprise themselves, especially if they're not getting enough sleep, if they're not eating enough protein, or if they've got a really stressful job and 10,000 things going on with moving kids around from soccer practice to pick them up at school and back and forth. Like, all of that comes into play, right? So
Yeah.
if you're just starting out after having been away from working out or exercising for a long time, take your time. We're looking at this, for the next 40 years, not for the next 4 days. I would rather you go a little bit lighter, a little bit easier, a little more gentle, whatever that means for you, so that you can keep showing up and not go, oh, I try working out, every time I do, I flare up my back and then I can't walk for 2 days and I can't exercise. And I stop exercising again for 6 more months. And then I try it again. This is the cycle I go through. Like, oh, like, I don't want that for you. I want you to be able to, one, get past that, and two, be able to keep working out. So we know it's important. We don't have to teach anyone, any of you that are listening, that exercise is important for you and your health and fitness in life. It's just about, how do we make this more sustainable for the long term?
100%. Because if you can get off that hamster wheel of working your ass off, getting hurt, being on the mend, and then working your ass off again, making zero progress, like, being able to do a little bit less for way longer is going to help you achieve way better results in the long term. And for all the ladies listening that wish you could just like say this to your husband, just like play this as loud as you can on the speaker at home. Just this section, just this like last 10 minutes. Because I know I hear that all the time. Like, we have these conversations, and clients will be like, oh my God, I wish my husband would do that. Like, he just keeps hurting himself.
Yeah, where like it probably affects you guys listening is like, now you got to rake the leaves or mow the lawn, because he's like, oh, I can't, my back. It's like, I feel like the classic line, right? I hear it a lot too.
Hey, and let's be honest, us guys are really good at milking the injuries. Like, we are pros.
Oh yeah. And sometimes I have people tell me too, right? So I'm gonna wrap people out a little bit. Sometimes they'll say like, "Hey, do you think I can get out of doing laundry, like carrying the laundry basket, like, or doing my laundry? You think I have my wife do that for me a little while longer? Because like my back still really is, it's a little tight. Can we like pretend this doesn't feel as good as it does right now?" I'm like, dude, that's between you and your wife. Like, I can't help you out with that, right?
It's like you can fake a doctor's note, but I'm not going to write it.
Right. Yeah. Google's available. ChatGPT is now available. I'm not
Yeah,
doing
I
that.
I feel like somebody listening right now is going to be like, I freaking knew it.
Yeah, right. I knew all the guys were faking it. They're fine. Yeah.
That's hilarious. I mean, I don't put it past anybody. I really don't, because I know, like on the training floor too, people would be like, "Yeah, I'm sore, but I'm not quite as sore as I made it out to be. I just wanted to get out of doing like X, Y, or Z."
Oh, man, that's too funny.
People are funny. People are funny. Well, honestly, we covered a lot, and this is probably one of the more dense episodes. Like, I feel like people are going to have to re-listen to this and try and like catch everything because we covered a lot. So before we go into another rabbit hole and like confuse the hell out of people, I think that's a good place to cut it off right there. But I can't let you get away without the last question of the day. This is like my only pre-planned one. Okay, are you ready for it?
Sure.
All right. So I've been following the practices of bigger podcasts like Diary of a CEO. Horrible for fitness and nutrition advice, but it is a big podcast. So there are things to learn. My thing that I took from them is asking the next guest a question and you answer the question from the previous guest. So anybody that caught my last one with Jamie, she left a zinger. Like this one is like deep. So we'll see how this goes. But before that, what's your question for the next person?
Wow. Wow. I love that. Right. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, what book do you want to read or are you reading? Like, and those are good questions, right? I'm not trying to dog that, but like
Yeah. I used to
for
do
the
best
next,
movie, but it just didn't quite work. It didn't fit.
yeah, no, um, hold on, give me 10 seconds here. I like had the gist of the topic in my head. Um,
I thought I wouldn't have to edit this podcast, and now I'm going to have to trim
I'm
off
so
like
sorry.
3 minutes.
Yeah, cut out the gap here. Give me a second. The question I want to ask the next guest. For me, I think a lot of things that. All right, let's see. The question I want to ask the next guest is, what are you doing today to prevent having regrets in the future?
I like that.
Because for me, that's like
Awesome.
a number one thing, right? Like, I don't want to regret not having done something, right? I think that question becomes very introspective of what am I doing right now so that in a year from now or in 10 years from now or in 40 years from now, I don't go, oh, I wish I had. Because I think that's the only way that we let ourselves down as humans, right? In this life experience that we've got is by doing things that we won't regret, right? Or look back and have regrets. I wish I had tried this. I wish I had worked out more. I wish I had spent more time with my kids. I wish, I had tried that project and started a podcast or whatever, learned piano. That there's mine. Like the little side piece. Like I would love to learn piano. So I bought a keyboard so that I can learn that because I wanted to not regret having learned how to play an instrument well at some point in my life.
I like that. I like that. I know learning another language is definitely on my list.
Cool.
So,
I
yeah.
love that.
Now, let's see. What did Jamie put? Okay, so Jamie's question was, why was the worst day of your life the best day of your life?
The worst day of my life.
And
Oh,
why would it
okay.
be the
Let's
best
cut out
day?
another 3 minutes of me sitting here with thinking. I didn't expect this. Why was the worst day of my life the best day of my life?
It's okay. I'm going to edit this all up to make sure we have like way shorter periods, way shorter breaks. So take your time thinking.
Okay. I was thinking like, what was the worst day of my life? Jokingly, it's like there's so many to choose from. I've been very
What,
fortunate, very, very blessed. I have a very good life.
it's like, which trauma do we want to unpack
Right.
today?
It's like, wow, like, is this a therapy session or like a podcast? Either way, I'm here for it. The worst day of my life. Why was the worst day of my life the best day of my life?
Yep. We could even adapt it to what was one of the worst days that ended up being the best days of your life. I guess the most impactful bad day, I guess would make sense.
I'm torn, right? Because it's like the worst. I feel like even worse is relative because for me, I think about like when grandparents have passed away, right? For me in 20, let's see, it was 2016. My mom's mom had died, and I was in PT school, and she had lung cancer, was doing chemotherapy and a whole bunch of, it was rough for her. Uh, and it spread to her, metastasized to her bones. And she came home from the hospital and the skilled nursing facility and all that. And she stayed with us at Christmas. Um, I had to pretty much like help nurse her back to health. Like, it was physical therapy at home and like a crash course in nursing. So like for me, it was like when I was in South Africa when I found out that she died, because she was in a hospital bed in my parents' dining room, and was like, "Hey, I'll try and be here when you get back," because I was leaving for 6 months. Um, and I think she made it about 4 months. So it's like for me, that's so much heavier on my heart, right? That is a more realistic thing, but it wasn't like it's that day sucked. Like I can feel that in the back of my head when I got that Facebook Messenger message about grandma dying. But um, the other one that like doesn't compare to it is when I found out I didn't get into what I couldn't afford to go to Northeastern. Right, I got into Stevens and I had like half a ride. I couldn't say no to that. I got no money to go to Northeastern initially. And so I kind of had to go to Stevens, right? And in a way, it was like, oh, smart kid over here going to engineering school, poor guy, right? Like, it's so stupid. But for me, I wanted to go to school in Boston. It's great city. I knew Northeastern was a school I wanted to go to, even though I thought it was for engineering at the time. And so I didn't. It wasn't even like I got into the school. I just literally had to sit down and be like, we can't afford this, right? So that sucked. But it's going to Stevens, really, you think about the trajectory here of engineering to business to PT to trying to do my own thing to, I know we didn't cover this, I'm not going to go into it, but like I made a product called the shin splint sandal that honestly I tanked on because I was starting another job at the same time I got my inventory.
I wanted to go through that and it just never came up.
It didn't go great because I started working a full-time job as a clinic director in Raleigh, North Carolina. So before I moved back to New Jersey now, right?
You had to leave. I'm about to head down there.
I know. I got good people down there, so I'll hook you up with them. But for me, it's that, right? Like the worst day of not being able to go to Northeastern, but the best thing that came out of that, my roommate freshman year at Stevens, Victor Iannarella, like my best friend. He's gonna be the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. Him and his wife Alma have been friends of mine, since then. Kristana and I are friends with them. Like we're best friends. Like we went to the Grand Canyon together last year. That's where I proposed to Kristana, was like in the Grand Canyon. We hiked
good choice.
6 hours down, or 3 hours down, 3 hours out. So like that day when I couldn't go to the school I wanted, and it forced me to be able to randomly be matched with Victor as a roommate freshman year. That was then the best day because he's probably the best thing that came out of that for me.
That's pretty solid.
Amazing.
I'm glad Jamie asked that question because that was pretty awesome. God, yeah. As we're wrapping up, I'm getting nipped at by my cat. So I feel like she's like, all right, chop, wrap this up now.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. So if you see some scratches on the upcoming videos, you know why. But now, before I forget though, where can the people find you? Where, like, if somebody's like, all right, Phil sounds like a guy I definitely want to go see if I'm in the area, like where's Onward going to be, and let the people know how to contact you.
Yeah. So Onward Physical Therapy is going to be at 20 Jackson Drive in Cranford, which is kind of that business district over near exit 136, kind of off the business park area.
Okay. So you're like near the Linden side of things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you're on, if you go to the football field on Myrtle and you just keep going and it goes around the bend there, and then you end up going to Commerce Drive and turning, go all the way towards the end. I'm at Jackson Drive there. Nice. That I won't be open probably until February after the build out. So if you're looking to follow along, onwardcranford.com will be the website. You can go there. The website's not available yet. I'm still working on a lot of stuff.
Hey, as soon as it is, it will be in the show notes.
Thank you. You can put the hyperlink there. It just won't go to anything. And then on Instagram, at onward_Cranford is my Instagram handle. You can follow me as well at PhilipVP, just my personal one on Instagram as well. And I think that'll pretty much cover you on most things. That's where you'll be able to see, follow along, and know, like, okay, Phil's open. I'll have other posts and stuff that you'll be able to see and hopefully learn from and help you guys out and keep up with where I'm at in that process.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, don't worry. That's all going to be in the show notes. One sec, Bella. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, it's all going to be in the show notes. If you're watching the video of this, you can see Phil's onward
Yeah,
PT
I did
right
this.
there.
Yeah.
And come on, I'm so close. I'm almost done. But before I forget, everybody, remember, if you have that one person in mind that really needs to hear what we talked about, that just keeps hurting themselves over and over again, just send this to them and don't say a word. Just let them listen to it and just be like, you know why. So thank you, Phil, for hopping on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope everybody has an amazing rest of their week. Go kick some ass, and I'll see you guys later.
Love it.